Wanted to welcome and thank Derek Leathers for participating with us today. We are thrilled that you're doing so virtually with us here at FreightWaves Live at Home. Thank you, Derek, for doing this. Much appreciated. It's always great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it, and it's always a good time to spend chatting with you as well, George.
Thank you. So, Derek, for everyone, is the president and CEO of Werner Enterprises. I'm going to let Derek do a little bit of description. I'm sure almost everyone that is participating and viewing with us knows who and what Werner Enterprises is. I've been lucky enough in our Waves talks and in our fireside chats to be able to talk to some of the most significant and impressive leaders that we have within the freight and transportation industry. And certainly Derek's leadership at Werner certainly fills that bill. So I'm personally very excited about that. Derek, just in a couple of minutes to set the table for everybody, your career, both I know prior to it, another company that has long ties in the industry, and your time at Werner Enterprises.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I've been in the industry just shy of 30 years. Started my career at Schneider National, a very high quality company out of Green Bay. Started as a fleet manager, actually, in their terminology, a service team leader, dispatching drivers. Held a variety of jobs in operations, safety, customer service, Mexico. Spent and lived years in Mexico running a Mexican truck line. And I've been at Werner now for over 20 years. So a long time in the industry. Don't know if I'm esteemed or acclaimed, either one, but happy to be here today.
Well, let's give you both, and we'll see how we view this after the next 25 minutes or so. What we're going to try to do for everyone in all of our Waves talks, obviously we're going to be topical. I'm sure that Derek and I could do well more than 25 minutes simply on COVID-19, but so much of what FreightWaves Live and all of the interactions that we've had with leaders has become really archival and has really become the kind of things that people want to go back and look at. So we're going to try to do both topical right now and also some things that we can make a little bit evergreen for folks. So I'll just start out and you ask right off the top, how is business today with everything that's going on around COVID-19 and the incredible impact that it's had on the market?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, business has obviously been hectic would be one word, I guess. Any good high quality operator in the transport space or logistics overall is only as good as the ability to manage their network and optimize their network real time. And our network has been disrupted like everybody else's has. We're delivering a lot of freight. Volumes have actually held up pretty well. But the mix of those volumes have changed considerably as consumer staples really have ramped up, 30, 40, 50% increases in volumes. There's been an offsetting decrease in, apparel and consumer durable goods and home furnishings and those types of things. So what it's meant is a lot of disruption, trying to keep the fleet in balance, trying to keep the network flowing smoothly and efficiently. You see kind of fits and starts with deadhead statistics at times that you've got to kind of work through. And through all of that, just trying to make sure that we keep all these goods moving, keep America moving ultimately, but doing so while trying to ensure our drivers' safety, our mechanics' safety, and all of the people here at the company. So it's been interesting. There's no playbook for it, but I think the industry is stepped up and is doing some pretty incredible work.
Could not agree more, and really should have started with a thank you to you and to everyone at Werner Enterprises, particularly the drivers who are out there who are doing the amazing work to keeping the economy where it is today. Let's speak a little bit about Werner and Werner Enterprises. How has Werner Enterprises, being a multimodal company allowed you to be more nimble in this very challenging time?
Yeah, so one of the things we take great pride in here, I talk to our folks about it all the time, is if you're going to be a quality player in today's market, you really have to be mode agnostic, meaning, our job is not so much to give intermodal pricing or give truck pricing. It's really to try to solve problems. And so as customers have issues they're trying to address, we need to, apply the right solution based on what the issues in front of us are. And so a crisis like this really challenges that, because there are times when there's way more volume moving that maybe traditionally had moved over the road in a particular lane. We have to explore and utilize our non-asset partners, or maybe it's an intermodal play to offset some of those volume spikes. And really having a portfolio, I think, just makes us a lot more nimble to be able to find the right solution for each issue. And we always thought that to be true, but it takes a crisis like this to really prove it out and push you to kind of use all the tools in the toolbox versus those that maybe you've been most accustomed to.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the toolbox a little bit. Where have you seen the freight shifting to and from? You talked about the different industries, but have you seen transition from intermodal to truck to intermodal, or does it matter geographically where that's occurring? What is the nimbleness delivering to your customers?
Yeah, so I think the first step or first wave of that nimbleness is just shown in capacity creation overall. So you might exhaust all of the asset-based solution that we have here within our walls. That spills over into our non-asset ability to bring extra capacity to bear. And it might very well then, also add additional intermodal volume in a lane. But on a more secular level, like outside of Werner, we've certainly seen a lot of freight that seemingly was moving intermodal before, that now, due to urgency and time transits and other things, have found that its way on trucks. So we've seen some migration that way. I have not seen many examples of freight migrating from truck to intermodal during the crisis, unless it's a capacity play where you've just got too much volume going through the pipe on a particular lane. Brokerage is, an asset. Well, no, it's a non-asset application, but obviously underlying third-party assets that we've been able to bring to bear in some cases that made a lot of sense. You mentioned geography. I think that's the big issue, is typical patterns. Companies like Werner and others, we have 10 to 20 years of very, very good data on when by lane, peaks and valleys happen. When do we see and expect demand to increase? And right now, most of that's been thrown out the window, because all that historical data didn't have in the background. And so now with this COVID pandemic going on, nothing we thought we knew is necessarily true. And you're seeing, a large influx of volume in the markets that are most affected. And those are the very markets that have the lowest amount of outbound. And so just a constant battle for, network balance, but one that I think we're getting through pretty well. And I'm pretty proud of the team's efforts.
Have you seen, and again, I don't want to be so just topical, but have you seen and had to react to geographies where your drivers were reluctant to serve, and you've had to utilize the non-asset side to do some of that?
Yeah, well, we've had some examples where there would have been maybe additional concerns, and I think appropriate concerns, but we got out in front of it early. So early in the process, we secured large scale quantities of hand sanitizer, wipes, and other antiseptic options. We distributed them out to our facilities. In some of the hot zone areas, the first masks that we were able to obtain well before any kind of guidance that they had to have them, we were trying to push masks out to drivers in any of the areas that were like hot zones. We worked with our drivers, obviously, if they had concerns, or certainly if they had pre-existing conditions of some type. We worked and found other drivers willing and able and wanting to take up that challenge so that their brother or sister, so to speak, didn't have to. The response from the drivers has been incredible. I would tell you that, when this all ends and the dust settles, fleet availability or uptime, if you will, from drivers has been as high during the pandemic as we've seen in any historic period. And they get and deserve a ton of credit. But behind the scenes, mechanics doing the same thing. People across the supply chain are showing up, because I think those of us that have been doing this for 30 years, we know and understand the importance of the supply chain work, but a lot of folks are new. They've only been doing it for a couple of years. never really worked through a crisis. And I think they have pride in their work and pride in what they do that maybe didn't have the opportunity to have before. So I've been, again, I'll say it again and again, but I've been proud of all of my colleagues around the industry because when America calls, we answered, and it's something that I hopefully will stick with people well beyond the pandemic.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna bridge a little bit, maybe stay on this, but talk about that supply chain and how Werner is evolving in your provisions. But as you interact with your customers, with the shippers, how have they been? By and large, are you seeing them step up to treat Werner and others in the way necessary to keep freight moving? Are they doing the right things? And also, are they paying the fair rate at this point that they should be in those areas where rates may be challenged?
Yeah, so I think when you use the term by and large, I think it would be very fair to say that by and large, shippers have stepped up and they've done the right things. So we've seen shippers providing PPE to drivers at certain facilities, shippers out and distributing hand sanitizer, shippers making grab-and-go meals available in certain cases or care packages for the drivers available. So the majority have done exactly that. Now, we've also seen examples of shippers that have taken different paths. You maybe closed down all the driver amenities and restrooms, things. And to be fair, I think they do it out of an abundance of caution. They're worried about any of their facilities being contaminated. But what we've tried to explain to those shippers, and most have listened and have changed their strategy, is the more you prevent drivers from utilizing facilities that are safe and cleaned by you, the shipper, the more likely you are to push them into less safe, less sanitary type options. And so we're encouraging shippers to lean into this, make as much available to drivers as they can, increase the cleaning of those facilities, because frankly, it's in their best interest. It helps keep their supply chain going, supply chain virus-free. But if you shut it all down and push people out, there's certain needs that are going to have to take place one way or the other. And I'd rather it be at a safe, clean, sterilized environment at a shipper's location than side of the road or a rest stop or rest area that may or may not be maintained. And so all in all, they've been good. We've seen the same thing on payment terms and rates. The majority of the shippers understand that if you double the volume in a lane, we're going to need some help to get that many extra trucks in there. That is not premium pricing or anything. That's just pricing reflective of the fact that trucks have to come from farther. Payment terms are more critical now than we've seen some shippers look to extend payment terms because of the virus. And obviously, that is very concerning to me. This is an industry that people pay their drivers on Friday and they pay their fuel when they pump it. And so they can't afford to wait 100 days to be paid. The large carriers would get through it. So this isn't so much a plea on Werner's behalf. It's a plea on the industry's behalf, because the carnage it could take on capacity overall would be very bad for shippers long term. And I think their money would be better spent by paying the carriers on time per the contract terms and not deviating it from that in a time of a crisis.
I'm sure you went into 2020 with innovation and the continuation of the expansion of the Werner model and the services that you could provide, and probably the largest curveball that could ever be thrown at us as far as a black swan event occurred. This will end, and you'll be back to being innovative. How do you keep that innovation momentum going, and what are you looking at from an innovation standpoint, from a technology standpoint, in the new normal as we go forward?
Right. Yeah, so innovation can't stop because of the virus. Whether it's over and past us in a matter of months, or whether it lingers into next year, in either case, we have to keep innovating and building out for the future, especially on the tech side. It's interesting, but one thing we've done here is if you think about, your tech strategy, there's a certain portion of it that keeps the lights on. There's another portion of it that kind of lets you run and maybe enhance existing products in the business. And then that third leg of the stool is all your true innovation, your longer looking strategic thinking. Well, we're not going to be doing a lot of changes to any of the existing run rate type systems in the building when I've got, hundreds of, really approaching 1,000 people working from outside the office. So frankly, we've been able to shift resources toward more focus on some of the longer term innovation, because some of the bells and whistles that you generally are always adding to core programming, I'm not implementing that stuff if you've got people spread all over, 1,000 households versus having them in the building where you can train them. And we're certainly going to keep spending money on tech because, we have our strategy we refer to as the 5 T's for a reason. I need tech to always have a seat at that table. It's easy for companies like Werner or other carriers or logistics companies to think about trucks and trailers, and they need to invest in talent and terminals. But tech is right there with any of the above, and so we're still spending, we're still programming, we're still driving toward the future because this will end, and Werner will be standing when it ends, and when it ends, we'll be ready for to go back to growing our business and our relationships with our customers.
Do you see going and spending that tech money, spending the one of the 5 T's in any particular ways from either an asset or a non-asset? You guys have done such a good job of maintaining that and having the nimbleness. Are you looking at investing in both of those, or in any particular way in a larger fashion?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're entering the phase where it's more of an all of the above strategy. Over the last couple of years, it's been laser focused on really our non-asset space, making sure that we're keeping up and or outpacing where the market's going from a digital brokerage, kind of frictionless brokerage perspective, working on some optimization and the ability to kind of interact more seamlessly with carriers of all sizes. And now that we've gotten that product to where it's where we wanted it to be by this date, it'll keep evolving and having to improve, but we got it to that first phase completion and implementation level where we're seeing the productivity gains. Now we're really kind of rolling into the phase where it's more about trying to unify the platforms, making sure that we've got a single point of light as it comes to customer records, a single set of data, doing a lot of bigger work that's going to take longer term lifting. But we have a roadmap, and the progress has been good. So we're happy with where we're at in terms of on the roadmap, but that map has a lot of distance left to cover. We're going to keep chipping away at it every day.
So from the biz dev side, as you say, about that single point of light, are you having to think about how in business development and sales that offering morphs? Do you consciously have a Werner representative going to Northwest Arkansas or to Cincinnati, to large shippers like that? And are they evolving and having to evolve to be able to speak all of the continued evolution that you've had over the last few years from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, they're definitely being pushed to evolve. There's no doubt. The philosophy I've always had is I want, every ship needs a captain, every customer needs a sponsor, if you will. And so we want to have one individual ultimately that's accountable for the relationship with that customer, that has enough breadth of knowledge, enough expertise to speak to the whole portfolio, that's able to articulate the value proposition of each of the different components that we think we can unlock for a customer. But then also the ability to kind of, call in the reliever when that's what's needed. So we have experts in every product line, but we have generalists, if you will, that are expected to always maintain the single point of contact with that customer and that relationship. I just find it, increasingly difficult to, if we're talking about a world of frictionless brokerage or digital brokerage or digital interactions in general with customers, to have 5 different people walking into the same customer pitching Werner 5 different ways. That's not helpful. I don't think that's not the brand image that I want out in the marketplace. I want somebody to own that relationship and then bring in the expertise when it's needed, for as long as it's needed, And then, of course, when it's no longer needed, just carry that relationship forward for continuity's sake.
That's really interesting. So how do you leverage your current impressive customer base as you launch new offerings? You may have, and I'm sure, and I've been lucky enough to work in many different roles with Werner over the years. You've got some decades-long relationships with customers that may be very comfortable in the way that they do business, but you've used words frictionless, and you may see a better way of doing this. How do you decide, and how do you leverage your current customer base as you launch these new innovations and these new offerings?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer to it, to be perfectly frank. A lot of times if we're launching a new product, if we're truly launching it from the ground up and we're building it organically, I noticed you had a tower of baseballs behind you, so I'll use a baseball analogy. When that product is at its infancy stage, we're going to want to make sure we field test it kind of at single A ball level. So we're going to work with customers that we know it can have value to right now, but we're not going to introduce it into the bloodstream of one of our core, decades-long customer relationships until we've made sure that product's ready for prime time. And that product works its way up from single A to double A to triple A. And eventually what we want to do is, if we're going to have a product, the expectation I've always said is it has to be relevant in the marketplace for us to maintain and keep it. So what does that mean? It's got to be able to compete head to head with whoever or whatever company is best in class in that space. So we don't benchmark across just a group of five customers. Five competitors. What we do instead is try to understand who the competitors are in intermodal, in brokerage, in one-way trucking, in dedicated, and then make sure as we build products out that they're meant to compete and exceed the expectations of our customers against a best-in-class benchmark. It takes a while to get there. It's not easy. It's not done overnight. But we're not going to risk a decades-old relationship until we feel like the value that we bring in that product is ready for their network.
Got it. So as you lead this aircraft carrier of a company and are bringing on new solutions, again, come back to COVID. Here comes COVID that you can't see or expect. When do you think we'll have the new normal? We always talk about how transportation has its ear to the ground. We see things, your data will tell you things before others may know about it. Are you seeing anything in the data today that gives you an inkling that something's changed or turned, or are you still waiting for that sign that will tell you that 2 months or 6 months down the road is when we expect the new normal to be in place?
Yeah, I think we still have some tough times ahead of us. I don't want to be a pessimist on this, but the reality is, some data that I like to look at a lot is, diesel gallons and consumed and things of that nature, because you can talk a lot in this business about how many miles a fleet may or may not have ran last week. They haven't had to file yet. There's no verifiable data along those lines. People can talk about what their pre-book percentages are, their load rejection rates are, but that only captures part of it. But diesel doesn't lie. If diesel's not flowing, if diesel's not being consumed, then you know that U.S. freight volumes are slowing. And so right now we're seeing declining volumes in diesel, in the first few weeks of April. That decline has increased, not decreased. I think that's a reflection of the first several waves of relief supplies have been delivered. The other stuff that's not shipping, it's still not shipping, but the relief volumes are starting to slow. And so in my best estimate, we're a few months away from really seeing a turn in volumes. With that said, though, I think when it turns and you get people out of the house, they've been on the sideline a long time. And when they get back out there and able to participate in the economy, I think you'll see people, back at it and participating. There'll be a lot of folks that are unemployed, but the government has stepped in, regardless of timing, meaning I think there's a lot of frustration about, how fast those checks were able to be cashed or even received.
Right.
It is coming. Those numbers are real and those dollars are real. And as those hit the accounts, sure, a large percentage will be on basic needs, but there's going to be money infused into this economy. So, my best guess for what it's worth is I think we'll see a slow May, starting with a slow rebound starting in June, and things really start to pick up, in kind of that July through back half of the year. Will we get back to where we were before COVID in 6 months? I think it's too early to tell. It's too early to guess, given we don't know if there's a second wave. We don't know how much worse unemployment gets before it finds bottom. So we're gonna hunker down. We're gonna still spend where we think spending makes sense and investing in our future, like tech, which I mentioned earlier. But I think we've got to be ready to ride this out.
So speaking of tech, and I'll try to land the plane here for us. In that tech investment, any specific specifics that are going to be, and we talked about how we like to have this this information be evergreen as we look back to 2020, and if the bottom has started now or if we're still a month away. In 2020, what will you and your team members look back and say, from a technology standpoint, that's when we took this leap, that's when we had this occur, and it'll be a stepping stone for in the future? Where are you investing that tech money today?
Well, we have a few large-scale projects this year, one of which is a fleet-wide telematics changeover, which will give us the power in the palm, if you will, of our drivers' hands to do some things with tech that we, have not been able to do up until now. So, the ability to greatly enhance the driver experience, kind of get out of the world of macros and programmatic approaches to how they have to fill out their day, and more toward workflow and intuition and intuitive kind of application of tech. That is going to be a big deal in our fleet. It's not as sexy maybe as some of the things that gets talked about out there, but it's critically important. Yeah. And our drivers are excited, and we've got hundreds of them on the tech today, and we're continuing to roll that out. In the office, we're doing a major next level upgrade to all of the brokerage platform that I talked about earlier. We're really to the point now where we can do buy it now pricing. We can do automated ingestion of loads and automated brokerage of loads, and we'll be rolling more of that out throughout the year to create a lower cost model for our brokerage capabilities. I think that's going to be a highlight from early returns that we've seen so far. A lot of innovative stuff going on relative to geofencing and just the ability to give drivers the information they need and only what they need based on the geography they're in at the time, and getting away from a world of mass weather updates or mass congestion updates or road closure updates, and instead extremely targeted based on where they're at and where they're heading and their time of transit. So there's some pretty exciting things that I think there's no one silver bullet. It's a lot of little layers that we're putting on, and that I think will continue to help us distance ourselves from some others out there.
Well, Derek, I see that the clock is telling me that I'm not surprisingly taking too much of your time and the people who are viewing. Thank you for your leadership during the time during COVID. Thank you to all the employees at Werner Enterprises, particularly to the drivers who are out there at the forefront. We really genuinely appreciate that. If there's anything that FreightWaves can do to support that, not just now during FreightWaves Live at Home, but anything downstream that you can look to us to help you support your drivers. We understand that that's how this economy rolls, and want to thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for doing this. Have a great rest of the second quarter.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, and look forward to seeing you live someday soon.